Airlines Confidential with Scott McCartney is made possible with support from RTX, Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon, connecting and protecting our world. Visit RTX.com. Infinity Flight, the leader in Cadet Academy flight training programs. InfinityFlight.com. Ontario International Airport in Southern California. SoCal, so easy. FlyOntario.com. And by Cirium, the world's most trusted source of aviation analytics. Cirium.com. We also welcome your business's support. Contact us at airlinesconfidential.com.
Welcome to Airlines Confidential. I'm Scott McCartney, and I'm a bit dazed and confused. Dazed because it would seem like Barry Biffle took the password to Frontier's schedule system with him when he was fired last month. I'll explain that later. And confused because I know lots of people who fly Delta Airlines who would not be considered wealthy. Yet the reporting on the Delta earnings this past week described Delta unflinchingly as the airline for wealthy travelers. Fortune and the New York Times and Yahoo Finance and MSN and the Salt Lake City Tribune, you name it, the narrative was the same. Wealthy travelers are leading to big profits at Delta. And I cringe a bit because I think there's a difference between travelers paying extra for extra comfort when flying, even if it's a $45 or $90 first class upgrade, and the millionaire class. We'll get into more of that. But I'm really pleased to welcome back Oscar Munoz, who can help us understand airlines and airline consumers today. Welcome back, Oscar.
Well, good to be back, Scott. The password. That's pretty funny. Hey, it was great to see you in Denver. And, our MBA class is started. And, you think your class begins here in the next couple of weeks. So
yeah.
Good travels on that. Good cohort. So let's start with the Delta wealthy thing. I am fairly certain enough, 100% confident that wasn't part of the narrative that they wanted and put it in their script, right? It's not something. And then with regards to the claim, of course, it's preposterous. I mean, we all know that the wealthy or truly wealthy don't fly commercial, actually.
Yeah, right.
Again, I think, consumers aren't being priced because they're high net worth in a commercial space. They're being served because they value what, in this case, Delta is packaging. And so we'll talk more about that as we discuss Delta earnings. But lots to see in the future here as the other airlines report.
Well, before we get to those earnings, let's get to the curious case of an airline that isn't selling tickets very far into the future. Frontier Airlines doesn't have flights available for sale after April 13th, at least at the time we are recording this. Our old Airlines Confidential friend Seth Kaplan, the first podcast co-host with Ben Baldanza, was the first to report on this at his Harrisburg, Pennsylvania TV station. Great catch and story, Seth. Typically, airlines have schedules out for sale for the next 11 months, 331 days to be exact. And as each day ends, the schedule for the next day, 331 days out, automatically opens. Southwest Airlines, which often has the shortest booking window in the business, is currently open through September 30th. April 13th is only 3 months away and doesn't include the busy spring and summer travel seasons. So what's going on with Frontier? Well, there is a lot going on. Recall that Frontier CEO Barry Biffle did get fired last month. No, I don't think he was the only one with access to the scheduling system or the password to upload schedules into reservation systems. But from what I understand, Chairman Bill Franke had grown very frustrated with Frontier's long run of losses. And so Frontier, with new CEO James Dempsey on the hot seat, is looking hard at how to come up with a schedule that might generate more profits this year. Obviously, no answers yet, or at least apparently. Frontier says it will publish its schedule soon and open it up for sale. For now, it has no seats, as I said, open for late spring and summer, and I think that could impact sales. Frontier has lots of issues. We've talked before about how the airline's aircraft utilization wasn't very good, especially for an ultra low-cost carrier. And it's hard to be ultra low cost when you aren't ultra efficient. Obviously, work needs to be done on that, and the schedule probably needs a big overhaul. But this looks kind of chaotic. A schedule overhaul for spring and summer should have been done long ago and ready for selling tickets. What's more, Frontier has been doing a lot of sale leasebacks on airplanes to boost cash. Several airlines in the low-cost space have been doing this. You sell an airplane you own to a leasing company and you get cash, or you take a delivery and you do a sale leaseback right away on that new delivery. The leasing company then gets paid back over the life of the lease. And basically, if you want more cash up front, you just pay higher lease rates. Works out for the leasing company. They're going to get their money back. It's just borrowing against your future, essentially. But that is going to make it harder for Frontier to generate profits in the future when those airplanes it used to own now have high monthly lease payments on them. Not that they wouldn't have when they own them, they wouldn't have debt payments on them, but obviously the leasing company's making money on this. Look back at the third quarter, the most recent reported until Frontier reports its fourth quarter results soon. Frontier shrank its capacity by 4%. The number of departures was down 12%, yet Frontier had 13 more airplanes in its fleet than the year before. Average daily utilization dropped by 15%. From 10.2 hours a day to 8.7 hours a day. JetBlue, which is also an A320 operator, and you might be wondering if this is all affected by the Pratt & Whitney engine groundings. That may be an issue for several airplanes at a time, but there's JetBlue with a A320 fleet, and it's averaging 10 hours a day with its aircraft. Spirit, also an A320 operator affected by the Pratt & Whitney engine groundings, averaged more than 10 hours in the third quarter of 2024 and 7.3 hours a day in the third quarter of 2025 when it pulled out of all kinds of markets and shrank considerably. Spirit also dumped 100 airplanes in its bankruptcy right after that. So you might rationalize that Frontier was caught off guard last year by the need to shrink capacity. I think that doesn't account for all of it. You also might say maybe they're keeping their powder dry for putting out a schedule. If Spirit does collapse, they'll have plenty of ability to fill in. That may be part of it, but you're really rolling the dice and taking a big risk if you're not going to sell tickets for spring and summer yet. I think the clear reality is that Frontier got caught in a bind because it was generating cash by taking deliveries rather than deferring them, or getting rid of older airplanes that didn't need any more as it cut capacity, instead of entering into sale leaseback deals on them. Any way you look at it, there are too many airplanes and not enough action to fix the imbalance quickly. So the whole Frontier Spirit merger thing, I'm starting to look at that differently. The disorder at Frontier seems to suggest that this is a company in no shape to undertake an expensive and complicated acquisition like acquiring Spirit assets. For internal and external reasons, Bill Franke, whose Indigo Partners owns control of Frontier, may have decided that he's better off just letting Spirit die. That sends more customers Frontier's way, and Frontier could certainly get more efficient by adding flights on those routes that Spirit abandons without acquiring Spirit airplanes and employees. And Oscar, one other note that perhaps suggests much the same thing. The Airline Pilots Association, which represents Spirit pilots, put out an open letter to Spirit creditors, basically begging them not to liquidate the airline. Letting Spirit collapse would result in thousands of layoffs and a real blow to the South Florida economy, the pilots argued. I don't think ALPA makes such an appeal to bondholders unless it has reason to believe that they are close to pulling the plug on Spirit. Spirit has made a lot of progress in its restructuring, but it still burned through $47 million in cash in November. We should get a report on December cash burn this week, and maybe it won't be as bad because of the holidays. But the company has been clear. Either it needs to find a buyer or it needs creditors to pump more money in. And neither of those things seem very likely at the moment. What do you think?
Boy, everything you've said is always spot on and well researched. And it's easy to pile on here and just say, yeah, you know what, this is done. Spirit is history. Frontier will make the best of it. But, part of our ongoing debate and conversation is important to sort of present not a balanced view, but or a contrarian view, but just certainly a different view because,
Sure.
I think the broader ULC model, I think, still has strategic purpose. I mean, the low fare, ancillary driven ULCC concept that's much maligned here, it does remain attractive to price sensitive flyers. I mean, you and I fly, you see a lot of people, we know a lot of different people that, you always hear that, oh, I got a $49 fare on, and name your airline. And so, the larger carriers are still, we're crowding the space with basic economy, but brand differentiation could be better. So, there are several reasons why I don't think it's necessarily kind of a name in the history book scenario that we've seen in the industry for so long. As you mentioned, merger talks are barely alive again, but another attempt to combine forces because standalone survival is harder, and so there might be a possibility in values here. And then, of course, the bankruptcy, the double bankruptcy that Spirit is in, is as we know, it's restructuring, not liquidation. It's an important nuance because airlines have emerged healthier from these things. And now, again, everybody's groaning right now. It's like, yeah, but it's Spirit. Again, it's a possibility. And so I don't know. A combined ULCC carrier, if agreed and approved, could represent a reconstituted entity rather than a simple disappearance of all these brands. So, outcome here may be evolution through consolidation, not just collapse. So that's just something, it's just something for us to think about and give them a little. Frankly, he's not he's a very smart individual, and he's thinking about all these things.
Sure, sure. And, maybe Bill's trying to send signals that we got other things to worry about as a way to drive the price down for Spirit assets. Who knows?
Yeah. No. It also signaled, broader market saturation for ultra low fares in the U.S. We live in a place here where legacy carriers can match at the edges, and so it's a tough model, but it's been existing, and there's still a need for it in certain categories. So, well, if we can, let's move on to healthier airlines. I guess.
Hey, I'm just curious. You ever seen an airline not selling tickets for spring and summer?
I'm going to say perplexed because that's a nice word. Confounded is probably more important. It's like, and so there's so much there, right? There's reasons why would you do that, and you go through them, and none of them are good.
Right.
Your missing password could be the most logical.
Yeah.
So, well, again, moving on to the healthier space, Delta reported, and again, without going through all the numbers, $1.2 billion in the fourth quarter, which is up 45% from the same period last year. So, interestingly, the ticket revenue from the main cabin sales was down 7%, but of course, ticket revenue from premium was up 9%. Hence the wealthy characterization that people did, and did a pretty significant number. And so the reality is that there's lots of customers at Delta and United who are willing to pay more to improve their experiences, and they aren't necessarily wealthy. American, Southwest, Alaska, JetBlue, as we're all learning, are all finding this out. If you offer good value and a nicer experience, people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be wealthy to buy extra leg room or trade up to a fare that gives them a seat assignment. They're just travelers who want something more than bare bones experience. It's tough traveling out there. It's difficult. And we saw it at United a long time. It's been great for the industry, is that we've all gotten smarter about what travelers want. And travelers, importantly, have gotten smarter about paying for something that sort of makes the trip better. And so keeping on with Delta for the full year, earnings topped $5 billion, up 45% compared to the last year, and revenue for the year was up only 3%. And the big swing came in gains on investments that added $1.5 billion to non-operating income. And the oil refiner, which, gosh, we haven't heard about that. I remember I was part of CSX, my railroad, and in the crisis, when the oil crisis, and when this decision was made for the oil refinery, and I had to recuse myself from all sorts of conversations because we were looking for fuel sources at the railroad, and this refinery was going to be a potential source. And we went to talk to Delta about possibly creating a commercial contract, and I had to step away because at the time I was part of the United Continental Board. But so I hadn't heard about this for a long time. But again, so it's good cash. But more importantly, I think Delta continued to say that they expect the demand for premium travel to remain strong. And I think you're going to hear that certainly from United and possibly from American and others.
Yeah, and I think Delta. I mean, we've been through it all for a lot. The whole American Express deal that does bring them. I'm okay. I'll say it. Wealthy travelers, but there are a lot of others as well, and it is interesting that. Delta expects the demand for premium travel to remain strong, and that's good news for American, for example, which is really pushing its premium products now, and certainly other airlines, even Southwest, which is going to start soon with assigned seats. And the new configuration, 40% of the seats are premium seats, right? They're extra legroom seats, and it's a generous. It's nice. I've been flying Southwest a lot lately, and people are paying extra for it. I don't think they're necessarily wealthy, but they're paying extra because they don't want to be in sardine class. All right. One other news item of note, Oscar, the National Transportation Safety Board put out an update on its investigation of the UPS MD-11 crash in Louisville, saying that the board is focusing on a part of the failed engine mount called a spherical bearing race. That particular part had been the subject of a Boeing service letter way back 14 years ago in 2011. That informed MD-11 operators of 4 spherical bearing race failures. But the service letter also said Boeing had determined failure of this part would not result in a safety of flight condition. It called for adding inspection of this part to a normal 5-year schedule. NTSB said it's still reviewing UPS maintenance on the airplane. The report generated a lot of news, but I don't think I really answered any questions. We knew the engine mount failed. Video showed that. And the NTS preliminary report had confirmed that. And that the engine separated from the wing at takeoff. Now, I suppose we have some specificity to the unresolved questions. Boeing knew this part could fail, but did the manufacturer, which inherited the MD-11 from its McDonnell Douglas acquisition, failed to prescribe a proper fix or a safer maintenance schedule? Did Boeing get the safety of flight hazard wrong, the advice wrong? Should there have been follow-up on the study of cracks and fatigue and an update to that 14-year-old service bulletin? And then there's the UPS question. Did UPS conduct the proper maintenance on wing mounts? Was something missed? We don't know. Bottom line, still many questions about this horrible accident, and it would seem they need to be answered before MD-11s are allowed to fly again.
Yes, interesting questions to be considered, and to switch the subject a little bit. Some interesting news from potential Boeing competitor JetZero. They just completed their Series B round, and they've raised another 175 from investors like United Airlines Venture, Northrop Grumman, 3M Ventures, and RTX Ventures. United and Alaska Airlines have already made purchase commitments, not orders, as we know, but just expressions of interest, which these venture companies, venture arms of these companies tend to do. And so they've now got more than $1 billion to work this thing. And as we know, JetZero, which was founded a few years ago, is developing that blended wing aircraft, which looks a bit like a triangle, kind of funky looking. But, the hope is that it's a lot more fuel efficient, which is a wonderful thing. And they're looking to have a demonstrator aircraft called the Z4 flying by late next year. Northrop is building it, and the U.S. Air Force is also very involved. For airlines, JetZero would have a 250-seat airplane that can travel 5,000, kind of the middle market that we've been thinking about for a while. I think A321, and before that, the 57 and 67 from Boeing. Now, of course, JetZero has set an ambitious goal of beginning commercial service in the early 2030s, which would be before Boeing and Airbus gets any new airplane that they've talked about into service. Now, that's ambitious for many issues. A lot can go wrong. I'm involved with several companies, Boom and Archer, and going through this process. So I completely understand the nuances that happen. But, my views on this aircraft, I mean, the physics are real. It's got a military pull, not just not just commercial. It's not sci-fi, although it looks like that. It's got some conventional engines, known materials, but it is a potentially a radically better airframe that can do it. Um, it's just old physics applied in a new way. So, but certification is a bitch. Airport and operations friction is going to be the big part of the deal,
Yeah.
and airlines are not are conservative capital allocators, if you will. Even if it works, if they won't be airlines won't be. I don't think the first movers. They'll wait for proof and scale. So the CFO still kind of runs that area. So um, these revolutionary aircraft, and I say this at Archer all the time, they don't fail on performance; they fail on adoption. So we'll keep working through that, but it's great to see. And gosh, we need a new aircraft, and this one seems like a really a good point. So, but that's news that I thought that was worthwhile. Anything on your end that you want to talk about? Other news?
No, I think that's it's been a busy week. It's going to be a busy week. We await Frontier's schedule and United's earnings, and so much to come. All right, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. We appreciate Cirium for helping to make this podcast possible. Cirium offers the most accurate and precise data and analytics to enable airlines to optimize planning, operations, and passenger services. The right intelligence drives operational efficiencies, enables you to predict market shifts, and helps airlines respond quickly to maximize revenue, manage costs, and seize commercial opportunity. Visit Cirium.com for more. And thanks to Ontario International Airport for its support. Ontario International Airport is celebrating a decade of local control. Thanks to public support, the local community reclaimed ONT, revived it as a vital gateway in Southern California, and ensured the airport is ready to soar even higher in the years to come. Visit flyontario.com/10 to learn the story and find out how you can join the year-long celebration of how a decade of local control has turned ONT into one of California's fastest-growing and most economical airports.
In addition, thanks to RTX believes no challenge is too great, no question too big, and no answer out of reach. That's why RTX never stops striving. The RTX global team works across Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon to inspire, innovate, and drive progress for generations to come. RTX pushes the boundaries of known science and finds new ways to connect and protect our world. Visit rtx.com to learn more. We also want to thank Infinity Flight Academy, the leader in Cadet Academy training programs, for helping us bring this podcast to you. Whether you're looking to build a custom pipeline or strengthen your existing cadet program, Infinity Flight Academy delivers consistent, airline-ready results. And for those of you listening, you've always dreamed of flying or know someone who has, Infinity Flight has trained thousands of students, many now flying for major airlines around the world. Learn more at infinityflight.com, Infinity Flight Academy, where the future airline pilots take off.
We'll be right back with more on Airlines Confidential.
Promotional support provided by the ultimate AvGeek website, thearchive.net. A vast collection of airline memorabilia, timetables, route maps, rare cabin and airport photos, special flights, and more. All at thearchive.net, the hub of air transport history.
In the mailbag this week, Will from Boston has a question about basic economy. Will says, "Hi, Scott and team. You've repeatedly talked about how basic economy fares have been transformative for legacy airlines trying to compete with low-cost carriers. I'm curious whether there's a very specific variable hiding in plain sight, the aircraft being flown. In my experience, basic economy usually means giving up three things. One, miles and points, which don't matter much if you only fly just enough to remember how TSA PreCheck works, but not often enough to earn status. Two, refundability. And then Will says often covered by credit card trip insurance. Yeah, okay. And three, seat selection, which is where things get interesting. I'm generally happy rolling the dice on basic economy as long as I end up with either an aisle seat or a window seat in a two-seat row. What I'm trying to avoid is the middle seat, or worse, a window seat that requires a full yoga sequence and two apologies just to stand up. We've all been there, Will. Because of that, Will says, I'm far more likely to buy basic economy on flights operated by 2x2 aircraft like Embraer E-Jets or Bombardier CRJs on United Express or Delta Connection, where I'm guaranteed either an aisle or window seat with only one person between me and freedom. I'll even sometimes take my chances on Delta or JetBlue A220s with their 2-3 layout. These aircraft with 2-by seating feel like a basic economy, quote, cheat code. By contrast, Will says, airlines operating primarily 3x3 mainline narrow bodies, especially United and American, feel like a much riskier bet. The fare may be basic, but the seating outcome can feel aggressively non-basic. So this is exactly why, as a side note, exactly why I think a lot of people buying premium products aren't necessarily wealthy.
That's right.
So Will says, so my question is, are airlines underestimating how much aircraft seat layout affects the perceived value of basic economy? And does this create an unintended competitive advantage for carriers or regional affiliates operating more 2x2 or hybrid layouts, especially among price-sensitive but comfort-aware travelers who just want to stand up without negotiating a treaty? Curious if you see any fleet network or pricing implications here. Thanks as always for a great show and for continuing to inspire those of us with a passion for the industry. Signed, Will. Great question, Will. Oscar, what do you think? Are airlines leaving money on the table because savvy travelers like Will are happy to book basic economy on regional jets and A220s because they have less fear of getting a middle seat?
Well, I'm chuckling because it's a great letter, great note, well worded. I love the yoga sequence and the two apologies. And again, as a former airline exec, we are so conscientious of how people feel back there. And so, that said, the money left on the table, it looks like it, but mostly it isn't. And I could go into a lot of detail, so I'll try to be concise. Airlines price not by aircraft type, but by system. We don't sell seats based on whether a flight has a middle seat. There's a network, and so that's this concept of what you're talking about. Well, it's not leakage; it's, for lack of a better term, controlled dilution. Right? We're trying to get people to a lot of different places, and then I was around when we developed basic economy, and it's designed to segment, not maximize every seat. Isn't about extracting the maximum revenue from every customer. We're really protecting the higher end value customer sorts of things. So, the small win from fixing that loophole that you've seen and found, it really risks a much, much bigger loss somewhere else. And then the middle seat is, the psychology is real, but the revenue impact is a little bit, I don't know, overstated. The premise that we have is the full airplane at a slightly, and I mean slightly lower yield, always beats a half empty one at a higher fare. And so while savvy travelers like you absolutely exploit the lack of middle seat on certain aircraft, we aren't blind to it. And essentially have decided that letting a small group win that game is worth preserving, kind of the broader pricing architecture. So again, a little leakage, but not nearly what you think. And I don't see any implications on pricing or fleet aircraft. Again, airlines are smart. They see this, but nothing too much in that regard.
Yeah, one of the things that interests me about Will's thing is Will shows a preference for RJs, and I always thought savvy travelers really hated RJs. He talks about standing up to get out. I have trouble standing up on the RJ. Your head hits the ceiling.
It's a great indicator of the consumer space that the airlines face, and it's so difficult to please everyone. Because here's the case where he's done what he's done, and you're expressing exactly what most people do. I mean, RJs. I mean, if I fly them, wherever I need to, and you watch people walk in, people that don't travel often. Even if they're not necessarily tall people, they walk into that aircraft and crouch down with this feeling of of angst and anxiety. And so they're not.
No, trade-offs, right? You got to gate check your rollerboard and wait for it in the jetway and all that. All of
that stuff is not a pleasant thing. But again, okay, so here's another one for you, Scott, from Joe in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Joe says, just listen to your episode with Chris Sloan in which he reviewed American's A321XLR. In every conversation or post about Americans' premium products, you certainly you'll hear mention of Dallas, JFK, LAX, Miami, but never anything about Charlotte, which is, I understand it, remains their second largest hub. I remain perplexed about this and have never felt that I've heard a good explanation because as America's second largest banking center and a very rapidly growing metro, it is one of the 10 fastest growing major cities in the US, and an efficient growing airport. It seems it would be well suited for more premium investment by American, yet just as examples, the largest Admirals Club there still hasn't been renovated, and we never see America's newest and nicest planes. Thanks for the show, Joe.
Great question, Joe. I've long been fascinated by Charlotte. Went there once to do a story with the airport on why they weren't more aggressive about going out and getting discount airline competition. And the reason was they didn't want to piss off American. Charlotte is American's most profitable hub, is not only second largest, but most profitable. And I think what you're seeing, Joe, is basically a reflection of the lack of competition in Charlotte, that kind of American is taking Charlotte for granted, so to speak. An airline, like any company, has limited resources. And so where are you going to invest the most money? Well, you're going to put it into the Admirals clubs in competitive markets, right? Because the JFK, Delta's got a great club, or, there's a huge battle going on in Chicago with United. Well, American needs to spend money there, doesn't necessarily need to spend money to keep customers in Charlotte. And I think that's exactly what's happening. American knows the Charlotte customer isn't going anywhere else. And Charlotte, the local community is very supportive of American. In talking to people there, Charlotte was, when the merger happened with American and US Air, Charlotte was really worried that American would close the hub. Charlotte would become the next Pittsburgh or Memphis or Cincinnati, all of which lost their big airline hub. They didn't want to do that. I don't think there was ever any possibility that American would close down Charlotte. It, as I said, is their most profitable hub. I think Charlotte could push more for more competition in the market, and that might get more investment by American and more attention by American and newer products from American. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works out. The new products will certainly migrate to Charlotte eventually, but American's got more trouble in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles. And even Miami, and needs to probably be investing first there. What do you think, Oscar?
Every single point I couldn't agree. So first and foremost, above all else, it's about resources. We know Americans' financial situation and its incredible debt load, so they have to be thoughtful. They are absolutely under fire. In Chicago, it's something I started a long time ago. This concept of a dual hub does not sit well with us at United. So we are Chicago's hometown, and that's the fight that's going on there. I just flew in and out of Miami a few times and have some business down there. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And again, your point of competitiveness is one. Now, you don't want to take a market like Charlotte for granted, but I'll tell you, the Admirals Club remark in particular, it is ridiculously expensive to build in those places, even in the existing space, but you want to expand, and it's just really valuable and expensive aspects of that. So I'm assuming that your instinct is right, is they understand it in American, but for now they're gonna just slow that roll while they fight they fight the battle on many other fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for another great edition of Airlines Confidential, Oscar. It's been great to talk, and maybe by next week we'll be able to book a Frontier flight somewhere in the future. Or find that password. Maybe Barry's got the password.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, and always a pleasure to talk to your audience. It's great. So long, everyone, and have a great week.
This podcast is produced by Mass Media. Info@massmedia.net.